And sometimes the tough thing with night golf is we're going to have some light flicker. So you can see just how bright and dark, and particularly we're going to lose the club face as the swing speed increases. So we're going to have to scrub a little fast with this one. But overall, setup's not too bad. We're a little open with the legs from here, if we kind of extended that line. This is not a bad position where that right leg is back. This is typically a position where someone wants to draw the ball or kind of come inside and hit. Um, and so the trouble that this golfer has is that amount of rotation in their hips actually gets too much, and it starts to affect the top of their backswing, where their back actually starts to lean back towards the club or towards the ball on the target line. And as we come into our first position, we can see the effect of that by just how much the hands and the club is inside the hands in relation to our swing plane. As we start to continue to wind up, we're getting really, really deep. We can see the hands are all the way outside of that left shoulder. And so from a position here, what we want to start to feel is the hands start to work up at that arm. And if they continue to rotate out, it ends up causing lack of wrist use. And what actually we see here quite nicely is that from the position here where we would think like, all right, we're getting near the top, we can see how, laid off that club is, where there's really no wrist hinge at all. The hands haven't done anything. And so it's fine to get some wrist angle or some, lag as we want to create it in the downswing. And if like Sergio Garcia is a great example, if we create that by having the arms tuck in and the elbow get in, that it naturally creates some more wrist extension, that's good. But when we don't have any setting at the top, what usually happens and what we see here is we start to lean back towards the target line, and we end up kind of falling over towards that ball where we have too much rotation. So we're now way over rotated in our hips and our shoulder line. We're, the kind of the same thing. We can almost see our back at this point. And so as we come down, the biggest issue is we're not going to be able to use our legs effectively because our right leg is so posted up and straight. And if we had a face-on view, again, we're kind of leaning more towards the front part of our body, is that we're not going to be able to push down or use the ground at all to help us squat and use our core to rip us around and turn. Or basically you're just going to have to stand up. And so this is one of the big hallmarks of early extension. And so what that looks like as we come forward and down, if I draw a hip line from here, or even if we draw it all the way from the beginning, right, we're now going to see how as we come down into the swing, into transition, that we're starting to move off this line, and we're going to very quickly get away from it. And so now we've gotten closer to the golf ball by a considerable amount, which is going to bring the hosel into play. We're now into shank roan, and we've essentially lost all power possibility with our legs. And so this becomes a very handsy swing. And so this release pattern just happens to be that, where it is very handsy. And so chicken or the egg kind of thing. But I think working on those hips will be important to do a few things, but definitely to get some stability. So as we come through, just because at night we're going to lose sense of where the club is, but it's right around the hands. And so here you can kind of see going through that our club face is kind of along that right line. And so relative to our spine angle, we're actually not bad, albeit our spine angle is pretty straight. But we definitely want to see something a bit more on an angle like that, where it would give us a bit more of a free return, where we could use our legs to turn around and we wouldn't have to have as much of a hand release to get the club square. This player does a great job of, getting the club relatively on plane, and as we move forward and down into the frame towards impact, we can see how the club kind of travels along that path down towards. And so we get into a nice impact position here where everything's kind of lined up. Because we've had so much force to use the hands, we're going to end up having a hard time not pulling the ball and kind of creating one of these pull slices, which isn't a bad shot shape. But if we're talking about consistency of what this player said in the beginning, is that, one day they might hit it, the tempo is great and it kind of pulls and goes this way. The next time the tempo is a little bit slow and we block, and then we get this big old slice. And so because we're only using the arms, and we're kind of having to post up on top of this left leg and release from a position essentially here, from this point, we're actually starting to just throw the hands at it. We're going to have a hard time with our strike, and we now start to create a two-way miss. The other thing with that we're going to see that's quite evident of a hands release is just how fast this right hand takes over the left. We have a lot of rotation going through. Now this is a great extension. We actually, get a full release on the ball, and at some point we definitely need to release. We can't just hold on forever. And so this is actually really good. There's a lot of really good things to take away from this swing, but I think the fact that we over rotate in our hips and our back really starts to lean towards the target here, we're going to have a really hard time with consistency, as well as creating this normal early extension with the hips. And eventually you can get some back pain with that as well.